Hello, today I've come to Runcorn, a town. In the old days, Runcorn was a busy place owing to the Industrial Revolution and its excellent rail and river connections. But things started to go downhill after the Second Small Disagreement of 1939 to 1945, when the government announced it was to build several new towns around the country. As it happens, Runcorn had escaped from the war mostly unscathed, but just up the road in Liverpool, things were very different. In short, there were thousands of people who needed houses, what with them being destroyed, hence the government's plan to build entirely new towns. Or take an existing town and expand them beyond all recognition, providing homes for the thousands of people that need them, which is what happened to Runcorn, losing 7,700 acres of open space to redevelopment. And of course, you can't add a load of houses without an appropriate road network, for which there were grand plans. And surprisingly, nearly all of it was completed, giving us a delightful 1960s design ring road system to explore. Let's start with what they didn't manage to build, and to explain, I've come to the southeast end of the road network, where we find a huge roundabout with some oddly placed roads. It's here that the Southern Expressway section begins, and regular viewers may have already worked out that the odd road placement is because we're missing a continuation of the main carriageway. The plan was for the Southern Expressway to continue over the roundabout via a flyover, and whilst it is tempting to think it would have connected up with the M56 motorway, because that makes sense, that wasn't the plan. Instead, the main road, a dual carriageway, would have been built looping around the east of the town, but this section was never completed. Yeah, the budget ran out, but the main reason was that the population in the town hadn't increased in the way that they'd thought. Nobody wanted to move to Runcorn, so they weren't about to scrape together the cash to finish the road. Which is a shame, because had they built this section, it would have been a 100% completion of the original plan, but no. The first junction that we come to is a good example of the budget running low. It would make most sense for the main carriageway to continue straight through, but instead the carriageway splits and uses separate bridges. And as far as I know, the reason is because of this, an electricity pylon. It's quite complicated and expensive to move and reroute high voltage electrical infrastructure, so they didn't bother and just built the road around it. Jobbed. Here's something that you don't see very often, a 60-mile-an-hour sign. These are quite common around the Runcorn road network. I don't really know why, but there we are. At the Lodge Lane junction, we start to get onto the main ring road section of the network via a rather lovely free-flowing interchange, but its modern appearance gives away the fact that it's not original. In 2016, the road was modified because it didn't really make sense. Before any changes, there was a trumpet interchange, and traffic heading towards the motorway had to turn off the main road to go around the tight interchange before continuing, and that's fine, but if most of the traffic does that, it becomes very inefficient, leading to traffic jams. So the entire trumpet interchange was bulldozed and replaced with an interchange that does away with the need to turn off the main road, so now you can smoothly drive through and onto the Western Point interchange. Which is a wonderful 1960s designed interchange, which is nearly original. It too has had some modifications over the years, where they've removed a linking section of carriageway and replaced it with a slip road, which ultimately achieves the same thing. I'm not sure why they bothered. I can only assume it was something to do with traffic flow, but it's a nice junction either way. After the interchange, we head on to the Western Point Expressway section of the ring road, one of 6 sections that make up the road network, and whilst it's not the most interesting section, it does take you on a beautiful sightseeing tour of the f***off chemical works that was established in the late 1800s by Imperial Chemical Industries, or ICI, who would eventually become the largest employer in the town with over 6,000 staff. They manufactured all of the nice things like chlorine and caustic soda, which they're still doing today. They also make salt here, which is extracted from brine that's pumped from the various salt mines around Cheshire, most likely Middlewich. However, today the company's size has reduced somewhat to only 750 employees. Here's something interesting. At this junction with Pickow Farm Road, there's a small section of abandoned slip road hiding in plain sight. It's not clear as to when it was closed, but it's probably for the best, because this junction has a stupid design where, at least originally, the slip roads all join the same road opposite each other, and this just creates hold-ups for traffic. Ideally, you'd want to stagger the way that they join the road, and I assume the closure of the slip roads was an attempt to make those things slightly better, but it's probably not worked because the rest of the junction is still suboptimal. Next up, we would have been enjoying one of the main highlights of the Runcorn road network by way of a large trumpet interchange that was perhaps rather skillfully squeezed into place amongst the existing infrastructure, but in recent years it's been completely removed and replaced with a roundabout, which is bollocks. The main carriageway for the trumpet interchange used to run from here over the road and then down through this gap and connect up with the Jubilee Bridge all the way down there, but that has all been demolished. Looking at an old aerial photo reveals how things used to look, but today there's almost nothing left. Almost. As you approach the new roundabout, keep an eye out when passing underneath this railway bridge because you'll notice that on the left there's a nice space that was once home to a slip road that let traffic heading eastbound join the A533 to head north over the River Mersey. And just by the roundabout are the remains of an exit slip road that interestingly came off of a joining slip road for westbound traffic, and there's a very strong chance that you wouldn't design a junction like this in modern times. I assume back then it was the best way to make use of the space available, and they didn't give a shit anyway. As well as that abandoned slip road, there's also this small slither of tarmac that is left over. I think this used to be part of the main carriageway heading left here. The only original retained feature from the interchange is this bridge and road that takes you up to the Silver Jubilee Bridge. Today it's a fairly normal two-way road, but it used to be a one-way slip road with traffic heading south to join the main ring road. An absolutely absurd idea, but it was seen that there was no other option. I suppose you could demolish everything, and actually they nearly did, because there was the idea of building a completely free-flowing T sort of shape interchange instead of a trumpet, but this part of town is like the OG Runcorn that existed long before the new town came along, and I would assume they wanted to keep as much of it as possible. Another junction that's been changed completely is the Bridgewater interchange. Before, we'd have been looking at a lovely free-flowing T-shape interchange, but as we can see today, things are very different. It's all because of the Mersey Gateway Bridge that opened in 2017. In fact, nearly all of the changes we've seen so far are because of this bridge. Originally, if you wanted to go from the M56 motorway to Widnes, I don't know, you do so via the Ring Road and Silver Jubilee Bridge, but modern traffic levels exceed what the bridge can handle, so a new one was built to replace it. To get from the M56 to Widnes now, you'd use the new bridge and go around the Ring Road in the other direction, and this is why places we looked at earlier, like the Lodge Lane and Western Point interchanges, were modified. The bulk of the traffic is now going the other way. Interestingly, there were plans to widen the existing Silver Jubilee Bridge, and on aerial photos we can see where a stub of carriageway was built in preparation for that. However, it was decided to build a completely new structure instead. A short distance along the A558 is the Asmore Road junction, a half cloverleaf junction that for a while was the end of the road. You'd have to come off the dual carriageway here and onto the local roads, as seen on this old map. They hadn't quite decided at the point of the junction's construction what was going to happen to this section of road known as the Daresbury Expressway. The plan was for that unbuilt section of road mentioned earlier to connect up here just after the junction, but what with it not being built and all, that had to change, and it would appear to me that very little thought was put into the road from this point onwards. As demonstrated by the Manor Park Avenue junction, which I think they gave up on halfway through. On one side, some neatly laid out slip roads, and on the other, well, I don't know, they scribbled on the plan and made these things. Maybe they were trying to avoid some electricity pylons like before and were struggling for space. A now closed off but once unique feature is this short stretch of abandoned road that used to connect directly to one of the slip roads. I imagine it was removed on safety grounds because as you come barrelling off the dual carriageway, the last thing you expect is somebody to pull out on a slip road. Had things been completed to plan, we'd be looping back around to our starting point, but since that's not possible, turning around and using the Central Expressway is our best option. As per the name, it's the central road in the Runcorn network, and if you go the right way, you can drive along it on nothing but slip roads due to its interesting layout. Starting at the Lodge Lane interchange, you can make your way north along a slip road, cross the next junction, and then use a slip road to make your way to the Bridgewater interchange without going on the main carriageway. This wasn't always possible. It's a recent addition where more lanes have been added because the junctions on this stretch of road are incredibly close to one another and there was just too much weaving going on, so they built a few more lanes allowing local traffic the option of getting about without interfering with the main carriageway and road, and in theory it's safer. What this has led to though is the creation of a very silly set of traffic lights found just by the Halton Lee junction. They're unusual because they're side by side and they came about after building those new lanes for local traffic. Here the new road and old are looking to connect up to either of these roads, and if it wasn't light control, traffic would be crashing all over the place as they cross over trying to go about their day. Another fun little design feature at the junction is found on the northbound exit slip road where there's a traffic light controlled pedestrian crossing. Somebody didn't think that through in their council meeting, did they? Because having a crossing like this on a slip road is very stupid. And there we are, that's the Runcorn Ring Road network system thing, whatever it is, demonstrating that it's not a case of build it and they'll come, but on the plus side, this means Runcorn has a fairly adequate road system which can't be said for many other towns. On the negative side, it's Runcorn. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye. To explain, I've come to the southeast end of the road network where we find a huge network. No, we don't. In the old days, Runcorn was a f***ing fly. At the Lodge Lane junction, we start... Traffic. Lights on. Before any changes, there was a trumpet interchange and